The Brazilian Shirt Name Podcast with Dotun Adebayo and Tim Vickery.
Yeah, and welcome to the Brazilian Shirt Name Podcast. We've got two legendinos on the podcast today. One, of course, is Felix White of the Maccabees, guitarist and, well, can I say frontman of the Maccabees as well, to a certain extent anyway. But great to have you with us. Who knew that you were a football fan? Through and through and through and through.
Thank you, mate. That will be a very controversial thing to say internally to the Maccabees that I'm the front man. You probably split us up again, Dotun. We've only just got back together.
Mate, your book starts with a tribute to them. It couldn't have happened if it wasn't for the fact you had got back together again, getting the band together again, like the Blues Brothers.
Yeah, that's exactly right, mate. But no, it's a pleasure to be here. And yeah, I've been a football fan all my life, really. So since my life took a lot of weird U-turns from the Maccabees breaking up 7 or 8 years ago and going into cricket and sport, I've always been sort of like, I've wanted to write about football, do something in football, waiting for an excuse to do it. And it sort of came about last year. So I feel good that the planets aligned, really. And I got to talk about something I wanted to for a very long time.
Yeah, and we've been trying to get you on the podcast for a very long time, as you well know. I said we've got two legendinos on the podcast today. Let's see what Tim Vickery's rock and roll credentials might be. Where have you been on tour with your band lately, Tim?
I spent my youth playing in bands, but we very, very rarely got out of the bedroom. You know what I mean? It was a lot of rehearsal and not a lot of gigging. And when the gigging, I used to play bass. And if you watch me blindfolded, you think I have boxing gloves on. You know, but I came out of the punk era. You didn't have to play. You know what I mean? So
yeah, great.
This leads me to my first question to our Renaissance man, Felix White. Which is, I mean, you've music, they all go together, and it is the Holy Trinity, ladies and gentlemen. It's the Holy Trinity. It is music, clothes, and football. It is. But in I'm not sure if this applies so much to younger generations as it does to ours. But anyway, music, and then you've written about cricket, and now about football. How does the music and the sport compare as a channel to emotions?
Oh, what in terms of against sport, music and sport, with channel to emotions? That's a fantastic question.
I thought so too. I'm glad you agree.
Shit, personally, but anyway.
I mean, it's the thing that's gone. But I've written about a lot in this book, which is really has been interesting to me, is that modern life, especially like last few years, I've definitely had it in my life. Like maybe. Trying to come to terms with maybe I might have some like weird sort of work addiction or some issues. That football is a place where people go. It's really like trope that gets used a lot at the moment, and it gets a bit annoying. But this idea of staying and being in the present, it really became I became aware of the fact that when you go to a football match of any level, something beautiful and blissed out happens every single time, whether you're at Penrith, like the extra preliminary I was, or the final at Wembley, where even about 15 minutes into that game, the only thing that matters that is happening in the world is that football match there. So you get airbrushed out of all of the complexity of the rest of your life, and you're just locked into it. And in some ways, that is what a good gig should do to you, or doing anything really, isn't it? Like going to museum, gallery, all that kind of experience. You're kind of going there for an escapist hour and a half, 2 hours, whatever it is.
I have a follow-up question now that based on what you've said.
Go on. Is it as good as the first one?
I think so. I think it's right up there. Is it the case? Is it this kind of works for me, I think, but maybe not for everyone. Is it the case that music makes you feel life more, and sport, and especially football, gets you to escape from life more?
Oh, wow. Music makes you feel life more, and sport gets you to escape life more. Well, I think in football's case, there is nothing better in the world of sport. I'm convinced of this, than a goal. I don't think anything gives you the feeling of what a goal does.
Yeah,
You can
Michael
go
Owen
back.
said that, didn't he? He said it was better than sex. Did he not say that?
Did he? Did he? Well, yeah.
I think he said that.
He's talking from a different perspective. He's talking about scoring goals, obviously, isn't he? But I think just even in terms of like the release of a goal happening, there's something about the way football works and the way football's built that it gives you that escapist mode, that actual adrenaline, endorphin. I'm not answering your question, am I, Tim? But I think it does. I think the emotion that channels is something you can't get anywhere else. So as much as music is built to have that feeling of connection, community, all on the same team, in terms of escapism, pure escapism, nothing is as good as a goal. Not a home run in baseball in the World Series. There's nothing in cricket that compares to it. That's just a mad. Basketball doesn't have it. You know what I mean? Because there's so much action. So I think football specifically does emotional escape probably actually, now I'm thinking about it, that's probably why it endures so much. That like going for that kick, that do you know what I mean? That release.
So music is the kind of foreplay, and the goal in football is the orgasm.
Tim, we expected better from you. After the first two questions, we expected better of your hat trick. Oh my word.
Yeah, if you want, Tim, if you want.
All right.
I should have said that, yeah.
Well, on that somewhat sordid note, don't get me wrong. We all know, we all partake, whatever it is, football, whatever. However, before I go any further, if you're watching this, if you're listening to it, then do remember to subscribe, please. We need your subscriptions, and tell everybody, about the Brazilian Shirt Name podcast. Tomorrow, we've got the Brazilian Shirt Name podcast, Global Soccer Interactive, where you can join in the conversation. But today, we're privileged to have Felix White with us, not only for his musical talents, as you've been hearing Tim tease him on, but also for his footballing knowledge and experience and journey as well, because it's quite a journey in this book. It's called Whatever Will Be. I thought it should have been called Que Sera Sera, but anyway, it's called Whatever Will Be, Will Be. And it's a journey through a season of FA Cup qualifiers, starting with those far off, long forgotten corners of Britain that will forever be known for their FA Cup glory, if only in beating who did Penrith beat in 1981 that the taxi driver told you about?
They beat Chester.
Chester,
and they
that
got
was
to
it.
the first round. So
Yeah,
and they played Man City in a friendly in 1981 as well.
And Chester ain't a bad team. I saw them play not too long ago against Barnet, which is not far from where I am. I thought they were all right. I know, 45 years on, but the question that I have for you, you see, you touched on it.
Won't be as good.
It's better than that, because I'm taking it from Shakespeare now. I knew that I had to bring in the big guns. So let's go back to the Bard as such. You see, football, because Tim is trying to sort of drive a wedge between them, but actually what you said, I think, was so illuminating. Football like a gig, or a gig like football, is a moment of drama. It's never going to be replicated. It's live and direct. You can go and see Prince 10 times as he, played at Wembley Arena for a 3-hour set. 3-hour set. You go the next day, it's completely different. It's completely the emotion, the vibe, the alchemy of the different members of the group, or the performance are just slightly different. And you want to be there on the night, don't you? On the night. And funny enough, for everybody, the night they went is the night. And that's what I get from a football experience. Even if it was a shit game, I was there for that shit game. And you can talk about that for hours and hours and hours and hours, and it will never be replicated. They say it on telly, miss it, miss out. Isn't that the real comparison here? That you're a performer, so the footballers may not be performers per se, but they're engaging in a performance as any cast and crew would in a Shakespearean drama.
Yeah, do you know what though? I've actually thought that since, because the Maccabees got back together and played some shows this year, and I hadn't done shows as big as that for a while. So we were doing to I don't know what Glastonbury would have been, 40, 50,000 people in the same at Victoria Park. And I actually had the feeling after those shows that that's the first thing I thought about, is that's actually a lot of adrenaline to be receiving, to have that many people watching you. Excuse me. And footballers have that every single week at the highest level. And so it gave me a different appreciation of what it's like, what the body has to go through to be sort of studied like that, observed. Do you know what I mean? Because even standing up and on a stage in front of people and doing nothing is very intimidating. Do you know what I mean? But like performing at that level. So it did make me think of him this year when I did that again, it is a performance. It is like that gladiatorial thing, going and doing that. I'd really like to speak to more footballers about that and be able to have a bit more of an open discussion, because you don't really have that. I guess they wouldn't want to show vulnerability or nerves. Like, you very rarely hear footballers talking about being nervous, do you? I remember maybe Mertesacker at Arsenal. I remember him saying after he retired that he was very relieved because he just was sick with nerves every time.
He was training up. He was literally vomiting before a match, even though he'd done it. And that's so much. I'm sorry to cut you. I was just thinking that's so much like musicians, you know, even though they performed that, it's like me on air every single night. I am not nervous. It's not like that, but you realize the jeopardy. The jeopardy that you're facing every single time. And this is why, Tim, sorry to have to school you on this, but you had those two great questions, but I'm just like rounding it all up. This is why Felix is the perfect person to talk about a season in the FA Cup, because like a band, you're on a journey. You know, you could be Taylor Swift. But even Taylor Swift plays, particularly some of her earlier shows, in far off places of the world. Think, nah, she's not going to play there. Like the FA Cup. Sometimes Man United have to go, or whichever team is, Liverpool, Man United, whatever, they have to go to parts of the country that we relish them coming to, because they've never seen top-level musicianship or football in those parts of the country before. And therein lies a jeopardy, because you've never been there as the performer, and you don't know what the reception is going to be. And you know, if you walk on stage and said, "It's so great to be here in London," as they used to say wherever they went in New York, when the first hip hoppers came over. No, for real. When the first
across England.
Not even England. They came to Stockholm and said, "Great to be here in London."
Brilliant. That's hilarious.
I saw Keith Richard in the Stones massive free gig they did on Copacabana Beach, and he's got a great way around that one, not knowing where he is. You know, he just goes, wanders up to the microphone and said, "It's great to be here," and he has a think. It's great to be anywhere, really, isn't it? You know, that kind of covers it all. But there is, I mean, somewhere. I'm fascinated with that dynamic between the footballer and the crowd, and it's obviously different from that between the musician and the crowd, because once you make a name for yourself as a musician, the people are going to see you, so the likelihood is that you're going to be adored. The relationship between a footballer and the crowd is different. Obviously, the fans of the other side hate you anyway.
It's interesting, isn't it?
The fans of your own team can turn against you more.
It's so interesting that, because it's also like it is fascinating, because like for me personally, I don't know, I'm probably quite a sensitive person, but if someone was to like have a go at me on the street once, I would be living with that for weeks. That would be inside my system. Someone saying I don't like the way I looked, or did something wrong and shouted at me. Like, that would take a long time to filter that out of my system. And we probably don't hear enough, do we, about what it takes to get that sort of abuse. Do you know what I mean? To channel that, especially if you're actually a thinking, sensitive person, which I'm sure footballers are more than they let on, but they are. Like, I've got this interesting thing with
no profession like it. I mean, in terms of that step up you make when you're a reserve player or something like that, and then you become a first team player with a big club. And then your work is being judged by, the week before you weren't even a household name in your own home. And then suddenly your work is being judged by thousands in the stadium and millions all around the world. How on earth?
I've got this thing with Emil Smith Rowe at Fulham, who's had he's in and out, and I do the official Fulham podcast, so I've got to be a bit careful. But he hasn't, like he probably hasn't set it alight like everyone thought he would, being like the record signing. But I sometimes look at him playing and I think, you're shy. You're just a person whose personality trait is maybe introvert or timid, and it doesn't matter how good you are. You're being asked to sort of peacock or extrovert, and you're just not, that's not inside your personality. And so I always find it really because we expect them all to be uber confident, all to own a space, and if they're not doing that, they're choosing not to. And sometimes I like, it's interesting watching Emil, especially because I just have this observation of him where it's like, even though he comes that rated that highly, it's just not in his nature.
He's a brilliant footballer. I think it's clear. He was at Arsenal, but I think you just hit on the flipping nail. He lacks the swagger that he should have. He came up with Bukayo Saka.
Yeah.
When they came up, they were kind of on a level.
Yeah.
And you look at Bukayo Saka, even though you might say low centre of gravity, young kid, whatever, he's got a certain swagger about him.
Yeah,
I think and this is no disrespect to Emil Smith-Rowe, because I think he's a brilliant footballer.
He is, yeah.
I think the reason why he didn't make it at Arsenal was exactly why you say. He'd come on for, the manager would entrust him with, let's say, last 10, 15 minutes. Every touch would be brilliant. But you think, why have you entrusted him for the full 90 minutes? Because you just don't have the swagger.
What's happening again now at Fulham? Even Marco's not trusting him, so he's coming on 20 minutes left at Fulham. And you got to think, because we've had at the Cottage, obviously, like when you have a real big alpha personality footballer that plays for Fulham, because the Cottage is quite small, they sort of emanate like a cartoon character. So Polinia would be a great example. Moussa Dembele, Berbatov. There's only really a handful of them, and Smith-Rowe was supposed to actually be that guy that was going to come in and just like emanate. And it's just interesting for me. I don't know how I've got onto that, but just that, like how it just seems like he hasn't got personality conditioning just to be the guy that owns it. You know what I mean? He's just like he's just more timid within his nature.
Tim, I don't know if you want to come in here. Just allow me this one thing. You see, again, making that comparison with music and football. With music, you can hide your deficiencies behind the music.
Yeah.
Like, for example, famously, Gary Barlow didn't have a personality, so the manager put 4 guys around him that had personality. So and they dressed him up, as best
that's
they could.
good. I like that. So, like you're talking about, like Take That was like a midfield.
Yeah, I like that. Five in the midfield. Yeah,
and you got to
And Gary Barlow's one in the centre of midfield as well.
He's Jordan Henderson. He's running it, but people just aren't necessarily realising that he is.
Although Jordan Henderson, to be fair to him, when I can't remember which manager was at Liverpool that wasn't giving him a game and said, "Look, you're on your way out," and he turned things around and he decided to lift his game and found the swagger, and stayed at Liverpool for the next few years after that and became the captain, as we know.
Yeah.
But I feel with the band, well, I was going to give another example. Maybe it's not fair to go with Smokey Robinson, but he needed the impressions around him. He needed those impressions around him at one point.
Yeah.
The voice has no body. It needs other tones just to flesh it out.
And he's Mr. Nice Guy, as you know, Tim, when you did that thing with me and my missus on More Love. He's Mr. Nice Guy. I think what we compared his version of You Really Got a Hold on Me with the Beatles version. And you said you can hear John Lennon.
I can't believe Smokey Robinson when he says, "I don't like you, but I love you." And I can believe John Lennon when he says the same thing,
when he's spitting that at you, totally. Yeah, because Smokey seemed too sweet, didn't he? In his
but it's Smokey's song, is what I'm saying. He can hide behind that because you've got these impressions allowing him to sort of like be who he is. On the field, you're naked. You get exposed on a pitch, particularly 11 aside. quickly get found out if you don't have the personality, the swagger, or whatever it takes to lift your game up. And
That's a
I
fascinating
remember
thing,
being
though,
on the
isn't it?
pitch once. I was on the pitch. They give me a credential for a photographer, and it was a day when Ecuador qualified for their first World Cup. It was Ecuador at home
Nice.
to Uruguay, 2001. So I'm on the
Awesome.
pitch, and you can really, it's a different game. It's a different game because you can hear what people are saying, you know, and the
Great.
Uruguay right back's having a hard time. So you can hear the Ecuador saying, yeah, get him. And you can hear his
Wow.
teammates trying to bolster him up, you know, and you really,
Oh, it's
it really
horrible.
brings out that there is this human element
Oh, it's
in there. How long,
horrible.
Felix, have you been cottaging?
Oi.
It's a fair question.
Tim, you're
Oi.
going downhill so quickly, Tim.
From that great question.
Right, cerebral.
I can't resist it.
Sam, the drummer of the Maccabees, is always talking about like, do they have any idea what it means to call yourself the Cottagers?
Well, yeah.
It's like the most Fulham thing ever.
So your journey starts.
You're lucky you don't support Arsenal.
Indeed, yeah, yes. You can't get much lower than that, can you? Was it a preconceived idea to follow the FA Cup all the way through, or was it just happy coincidence that you happened to be in?
No, so what happened was because I've really like fallen in love with writing because I feel like I've got a little bit less pressure on it. Since when I was like in Adebayo, I still make a lot of music for films and stuff like that and other bands, but I always had this feeling like when making music, like I kind of knew so much more about the history of music. So I felt like every time I made music, I was always much more critical about myself. But writing, I felt a bit more liberated because I was just free to do it. So I wanted to write a book, and my other band, 86 TVs, were touring last summer, and we were playing Kendal Calling, and it was one of those weird. I was having a weird day touring in a splitter van. And basically, long story short, I realised, because when you're touring in a splitter van, the only thing you know in your universe are venues and service stations. That is your correspondence. That's what your communication with the world is. And we were on the way to Kendal Calling, and it was like Noah's Ark in there. Whatever the services were, Lancaster services, it was like two of everyone, and there were football teams, kids, families. And people going to weddings, and it made me realise like, oh, it's midday Saturday, and then I did the maths of like, you know, how you're inbuilt to think. If it's 12 o'clock Saturday, then football's happening at 3 o'clock today, and I realised we weren't on stage till a bit later, so I did a little bit of quick light on my phone, and Penrith were playing down the road, so I've arranged that I could bolt, get out of Kendal Calling, go to Penrith, watch a game of football because I just needed it for whatever reason, and get myself back. And it turned out it was the extra preliminary round of the FA Cup, first round proper, Penrith Pickering Town. Problem was, and I had that experience we just talked at the start of, like, I'm watching a game of football, the world's like, all the problems are gone. I'm just like almost sort of like wildlife spotting, hearing the community chat here, like hearing the microphone feedback by the announcer. People, you know what I mean? Like they've run out of programs, so they're printing more in the printer, in the club shop, all this amazing. And this game of football is like unfolding. And when it finishes, I suddenly realize I'm in the middle of nowhere. And it's one of those places where there's no taxis, buses, you know, there's no one there. Like, so someone gives me two numbers, mobile numbers, and I phone these guys, and they're like the shuttle run service. They say they can't take me. So I end up knocking on the door of the office of the club and begging the chairman to drive me to Kendal Calling because I'm on stage in an hour. And bless him, he agrees to do it. And when I'm in the car, I just have this moment of like, it happens really quickly to me, like, oh, this is the first qualifier around the FA Cup. This is the beginning of an adventure. And I just it hadn't been sorted out. It's like,
unless I'm greatly mistaken, Penrith is where Widnell and I go on holiday by mistake. What you have done is that you have gone to Penrith and written a book by mistake.
How have I not put that in a book?
You've missed it.
How have I missed that?
Don't worry, everybody misses a pen at some point. You know, we put it on the penalty spot for you, and you miss it. First. Don't worry.
I can't believe I missed that.
Mate, that's not. There's still a lot more of the book to read than that. You know, don't worry. Don't worry.
That's true.
Those
And
who haven't seen this podcast or heard it won't even know that you've missed a pen. Everybody else will. Everybody else will.
Yeah.
They know that you've
That's
skived it.
hilarious.
But
That is
what I loved
hilarious.
about that anecdote, though, was you didn't know that was the chairman of the club.
Yeah.
He didn't know that you were the star of the Maccabees, or one of the stars of the Maccabees. Phew.
Front man in your eyes.
And, yes. And you know, the synchronicity, the beauty of it, he understood your predicament, which is
He did.
you're a flipping addict. You know,
Yes.
you're on the crack of football, put it that way, although that doesn't sound right either, does it? Given all the cottaging business.
Cottaging on the crack of football.
Yeah.
That was you. That wasn't me. That was you. You take the black. You take the flak for that one.
That wasn't the right use of language. I'm just giving you the hard line according to Terence Trent D'Arby. Yeah, that's it. But he was willing to take. I believe wherever you are, and it's happened to me in my travels overseas. When I was a kid, I used to do a lot of hitchhiking all over the place in Europe, and two things, going back to our original thesis, two things opened the way for a young black boy hitchhiking across Europe in those days. It wasn't, you know, it wasn't a rarity maybe, but there weren't many of us doing it.
Yeah.
Two things opened the way, and once or twice, neither of the things opened the way, but one did get me released from jail, even though it didn't open the way, but it gave me an escape route. But I'll come on to that in a moment. But
yeah, I want to know
it was
that.
either football or music.
Right.
So I literally would go to people and say, look, do they like reggae? Because that meant, okay, I'll hang around for a bit. The other thing was I got into situations, one in particular in Hamburg, where there were all these sort of new Nazis doing all their salutes. I didn't know what it was about, but there were football fans going to Hamburg, and there was just a handful of them that were these new Nazis. And when everybody else saw my predicament, they said, come in our wagon, come in our, you know, in the old days when you had these little coupes and the corridor that went along the side of the train, come in our coupe. And they had loads of bottles of cans of beer, and they turned out to be Hamburg fans. And they said, look, don't worry about them lot, stay with us, we'll take you into the match and everything like that. And I became a Hamburg fan on that day.
No way.
That's a true story. But I'm saying
great.
Football and music were always a joint sort of open conversation. I remember going to Euro 2004 and seeing Croatia fans there. And, you know, Croatia, I'd always heard bad things about Croatia because, you know, there aren't a lot of black people there. There wasn't a lot of cosmopolitanism in Croatia. It's only like, well, maybe a decade after, not even that, maybe, a decade and a little bit more after the fall of the Berlin Wall and everything. So they hadn't sort of assimilated so much. But I'll tell you one thing, those fans, when they saw me, it was like the way that you're saying that you forget everything when you're in a football match, you forget the world. And it was like that. It was kind of like they forgot everything else. Hey, it was all like this, campeon, and everybody was like dancing around and jumping around. And there is a beauty about that. There is a humanity about that, which I get the same feeling in music. I'm from the generation where people used to gob on each other to show their love. Hang on a second, just open your mouth. And I know it was disgusting. I know it was, but in those days it was like, oh man, you love me. Oh, that's great, man. Go on, have a bit of my
people
gob.
genuinely do that? That's genuinely what happened.
Of course we did. Yeah.
So because I love that story about the Ramones, how they thought people hated them because they were spitting on them until they got back to America and they were told that means you were good. Yeah. That was the Americans.
I always say the Americans were the granddaddies of punk, but they never knew what hit them because we were the ones that formalized it. We were the ones who said, this is how punks dress.
Well, we turned it into social class, which it wasn't for them.
Of course. Yeah.
Changes the whole dynamic.
Sure. Well, I mean, the Ramones would beat on the brat, beat on the brat, beat on the brat with the baseball bat. Oh yeah. But they were like dressed in black leather jackets and, you know, drain pipe jeans, and they could have been bikers. Us, our punks, were wearing bondage. We were wearing
Yeah.
designer ripped T-shirts by Vivian Goldman, as you well know, and we had the style. You know, they just like didn't comb their hair. No, we spiked up our hair and stuff. Well, those who could, not all of us were able to at the time. You understand? But so
interesting. But so you're saying that punk wasn't in America? It wasn't a social class motivated thing. So the Ramones weren't about that necessarily. They were just making music.
They didn't even call it punk.
It was like rock and roll music.
Yeah,
the same.
It was.
Yeah.
Wow. Richard Hell and the Voidoids. Blank Generation. When that came out, they didn't call it punk. I bought it 12-inch. I was like looking for where does it say anything about punk? No, nothing.
Wow.
The English kids just had the Jubilee to hang it against as well. It's always good to have something to mobilise against.
Yeah,
absolutely right. Whereas
so when punk came from America and the Jubilee, they made it this sort of like antagonistic, rebellious. Yeah.
The funny thing about what Tim says about the Jubilee, that was 77. If you look in the record books, America was celebrating its second centenary in 76, 77. But they didn't have the movement to go with it. They didn't latch that onto this rebellious youth alternative movement, whereas we do.
It's less class thing than the Jubilee, isn't it? You know, you could tell a story of America, the American dream and belonging to everyone. The Jubilee is very much know your place and you're at the bottom of it. You know, hence no future unless you make one for yourself. So your journey, this is an English journey, isn't it? You know, it starts in Withnail and I territory. And what do you learn about our septic isle as you go through the different rounds of the FA Cup?
Not septic isle, septed.
Increasingly septic, I fear. But
I think there's a lot of, do you know what? I tried to write a lot because it's interesting how football does that. And Dotun, you just sort of described that, where football is both parts extremely hospitable and extremely inhospitable at the same time. And it depends what filter you view it through. And I think that's a lot of life is like that. But also England is, because I was driving through England in the changing seasons, you do forget, just not from a not personal talking people and social sort of thing, there's a lot of England that is very, very beautiful. So if you're going on a train through the winter, like where it is across Manchester, England is absolutely stunning. Like it's sort of magical, and you do forget that kind of thing going. And so there is something like a bit mythological about traveling England to go and watch football, which makes it attractive because you sort of do feel like you're traveling through history. I've sort of taken that a bit off piste, but that's what I really liked about the traveling through different like through the different rounds and overhearing people on trains and all that kind of thing, getting a sense of what Englishness is, but also talking to the way that you communicate, like how you would say, Dotun, like I love reggae. What the book ends up really being about is the communication between how football communicates something between a child and an adult, both internally, your child, like your 8-year-old version of yourself, and also literally. So often, I'm sure it'll be the case for you guys, most people think football was the best when they were 8, when they first fell in love with it. Pretty much no matter how old you are, you think football was the best when you were 8. That's what you remember most. So I'll remember Chris Waddle's free kick in the semi-final of the FA Cup against Sheffield United. For me, that football never got better than that, because that already explained everything I needed to know about football. But what becomes interesting about the book is that I get my nephew Jet into football, and I start to learn the same way you just said about reggae, that it explodes in his head as a kid. And I hadn't realized until writing a book that 7 or 8 excuse me, is the age of reason. So when you become 7 or 8, you start to you develop for the first time this idea of morality, who you are in the world, who other people are, fairness, all this kind of thing. So football very neatly tells you sense of self, gives you a communication and portal into the adult world, where all, like you're talking about reggae, all an 8-year-old child needs to say to any adult is, who do you support? And you are in, you're having a conversation. So what was shut down before is suddenly an open communication with anyone in the world, pretty much. And then also you've got geography, reading and writing, pronunciation of names, going out and running. So if it's not a chore to you, you can almost see the capacity of the human brain to learn when they're falling in love with something at that age through football. And I think that's the kind of thing that most of us have had with football, that we're always chasing down, or almost in a way, almost paying back to it, because it's given us that thing, that feeling. And that feeling is almost so powerful that you're always repaying the game back for what it's given you in that initial walking into life. Does that make sense? I mean, and when I say that, that's like falling in love with music as well for the first time, actually.
Yeah,
like with bands.
that refers to me. That resounds more with music than it does with football.
Really?
Football, yeah, because my dad was a Nearly man. He had trials for some rabble called Charlton Athletic. I don't know if you ever heard.
Yeah,
No way.
Yeah,
we always honoured him on this
he
programme.
was a Nearly man at football and a Nearly man at cricket as well.
Really?
So as his first son, I had this responsibility to achieve his dreams for him. And I was crap, but I always loved it.
No
so
way.
I've always known football. I've always, and cricket. They've always been there. So I don't have that moment of 7 and 8, that epiphany.
Interesting. Yeah.
But music, the thing that it changed my life. Summer of '76, good summer for cricket as well. The Beatles films was on TV for the first time, and
really?
In the early '70s, I was born in '65. The early '70s, I couldn't get into anything. Couldn't get into the glam rock and anything. Just looked fucking ludicrous. Look at what they're wearing. It just. And then Hard Day's Night was on, and it was wow. I just felt it just changed my life.
Really?
So I remember reading. It's a hard read, actually. Miles Davis's autobiography. As one of the reviewers said, it could be cut by half just by removing the word motherfucker. It's not an easy read, Miles Davis' autobiography. But he talks about the first time he saw Charlie Parker. And he spent his entire life trying to chase that. That's what I want. It's one of the things that just made him so restless. Anyone normal, you've done A Kind of Blue. Just do it again for the next 30 years. It's
Totally.
brilliant. But no, because you're chasing. So all of that you're talking about resounds more to be about music. Although I've got a.
But you made your life was football, though, Tim. You end up making your life football. So
yeah, but that's because I can't do music. It's the thing that I would love to have, but I can't. And
you could have written about music or anything like that.
Well, I do a little bit from time to time, but this is the thing. It doesn't have a score every week. There's football just gives you more narratives. With my grandson who's just turned 8, I'm seeing all of this, and his dad has taken him to the stadium since he was 3. But I'm seeing the way that in the last World Cup he got to know all the countries of the world, just like me. That's how he did it through football. And he'll even do mathematic exercises. He will do them. Yeah. If I make them all around the goal difference of Flamengo. And he'll happily do, if I say Flamengo scored 56 goals and conceded 16, what's the goal difference? And he'll do that with his fingers. And
exactly.
Exactly as you're saying, through football, it's everything. It's his maths, it's his reading, it's his physical education, it's his getting on with his mates, it's his socialization, it's his getting on with his mates. It is everything.
Exactly.
And
also
this is what
that's so
about.
True. It pretty much is, but also it's also how football defines. Just quickly, if you don't mind, we've got a second, haven't we, for me to describe this quickly. Football defines more than any other thing. Who am I? Where am I from? And clothes used
to do that when we were kids. Clothes used to do that
anymore.
Much more than they do now.
They don't do it anymore, I don't think. Well, maybe they do to a degree.
Having the wrong width trousers, it was serious stuff.
Yeah. And what were you dressing like?
I was trying to do. I didn't have any money, and as I played in a band, it all went into the buying a mic stand or something like that. And I love clothes, and I spend too much on it. And there's a formative moment I was in sixth form, and I'd just been in a school that it had just closed down. It was next secondary modern. And I went to a grammar school. It was comprehensive, but it had been a grammar school, so it was a bit more snooty. The kids had a little bit more money, and you had to be their maths monitor, something. So I'm there in the class, and I didn't have enough clothes for like the whole 5, because you're sixth form, you can wear your own clothes.
Right.
I only
yeah,
had
yeah.
clothes
Offer
like
all
2
every
days a
day,
week,
yeah.
really. Yeah.
Yeah.
The others were the stuff my mum bought, and my mum would just buy whatever's cheaper. That's
Right.
no conception of stuff. It's just not important. All that matters. So I vividly remember these kids when the teacher goes out of the room, bouncing up and down and singing, "Let's all go to Tesco's where Timmy buys his best clothes." And I'm thinking,
Oh,
fuck you.
mate,
I am not
so
going to show that
cruel.
this has got to me. I'm not. But
So
my
cruel.
time will come. It will come.
Totally.
Yes.
That was football boots for my
Yeah,
generation
that's
because
awful.
Woolworths had these football boots. Like these all these low price supermarkets will do. They'll design their football boots in a way that you can see a
Home
mile
brand.
away where they came from.
Oh,
Yeah,
God.
yeah.
Stop,
Yeah.
stop
the
doing this to me.
Well, no,
Yeah.
but no, I only got boots from them. They look more like rugby boots than football boots because they were like ankle high kind of thing.
Yes. Yeah.
And,
Oh, God,
or old school Stanley
And the
Matthews
laces were so long, you could never tie them properly. You had to tie
You
them
had to tie
around
them around
hundreds
your
of
ankle.
times.
Yeah, quite a few times. Tie them around your ankle.
No, stop doing this to me.
Blood
Stop. This is
supply
too
to your
painful.
feet. But okay, look, we haven't got a huge amount of time left. Let's get back to this book. A season.
I was enjoying that. I'm hearing about the laces more.
Mate, we can do that on another occasion.
We'll do it another time.
I want to make sure that your book sells and that people find their way to getting a copy of this wonderful book that you've put.
So where'd you go? Where'd you go during the journey? Where did it take you?
Well, yeah.
I go to Penrith. I'll try and reel them off as much as I can. Penrith, Cray Wanderers, Haywards Heath Town, Dulwich Hamlet. All trying to think now.
I know that ground. I know Dulwich Hamlet.
What, Hamlet? Yeah, well, that's another thing. I mean, that's another conversation. So basically, every round becomes a story about a different version of England or English football. And Dulwich Hamlet obviously has its own background about sort of maybe indoctrinating a sort of St. Pauli ethic, but also that kind of scene stir, the way that also the way football shifting now and rejecting a lot of bigger football for a sort of more localized, but also a kind of, well, Dulwich Hamlet sort of middle class, a lot of it sort of version of, England football. So there's lots of stuff packed into that story.
This is counterculture through football, isn't it? There's
a lot of counterculture. I mean, but also like the passing of time. So the last ever FA Cup game of Goodison Park, displacement and belonging via AFC Wimbledon versus MK Dons, which becomes the definitive story of the book, really, and meeting lots of different people. And just to quickly get into that, I was never given a team. My mum was from Palestine, and her brother, Paul, was into football like I was at the same age, and they got moved around the Middle East a lot, but with an English dad who my grandmother had met, like fixing telecommunications, and my brother, because he was so obsessed with just wanting to be from a place and not knowing where it was, just decided randomly, and Paul did, that he supported Wolves. Never been to Wolves, never didn't have any idea where Wolves was, and because my mum had heard that her dad lived in Bromley West, she decided she supported West Brom. So they had a total misunderstanding of where they were from, but it really spoke to their own displacement because they were trying to pin themselves to a place inaccurately through it. And then that eventually leads to me talking about Fulham and how I think I identified something in Fulham, having not handed it to me when my mum eventually got ill, where Fulham taught me that it could handle loss, disappointment. It could handle hurt. It told me something about that in a way other clubs didn't. So I would find myself as a teenager going to Fulham and very secretly, very privately hoping they lose, because I was after the kick of communal feeling of hurt and loss and everyone like consoling each other. Yeah. And I don't think for decades later, I didn't unpack the fact, because I was ashamed of this feeling. But when I look back on the kid that my mum, who'd supported West Brom accidentally, and then she got ill having moved from Palestine, and all that comes with having an autoimmune disease, then I suddenly feel like I had picked up all of that feeling. And then through football as well myself, I was looking for it to console me, and I recognised subconsciously somewhere that Fulham was going to do that better than, for example, Chelsea, where it was much more geared towards winning, much more culturally defined itself by alpha dog mentality. And I think that's how football, and Fulham especially, guided me safely into adult life sort of like dragged me there. So yeah,
Yeah,
there's a lot in the book.
No, there's a
Fantastic
lot.
stories.
And
Fantastic.
so-
You have whetted my appetite for this book so much.
Okay.
And of course, if you're going to all the football grounds in England, certainly, people want to know which ground makes the best pies.
Do you know what? It's a weird thing about it is I think it's quite level. There's a Magic's the FA Cup. It's not just your Magic. It's like from Penrith to Wembley. There's not a huge difference. It's not like the cuisine goes up as you go up. Do you know what I mean?
In fact, I thought it was the other way around.
So the only thing binding the country together now is bad cuisine.
Yeah, football.
That's all there is.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. That's a unifying thread. That's the leveler
Yes.
we've got now.
Yes.
Burgers at football.
I have
Wherever it
been
is.
to Penrith's ground, and maybe it's just my imagination. I thought they had decent chips, but once you get up north as well, the quality of the chips generally, football ground or not, do get better. I'm not sure what they fry the chips in, and I don't like to ask, but I suspect it might have something to do with a squeaky little animal. But anyway, that's another thing. Okay, which ground has the best supporters, and define that in any way you like?
I'm going to have to say for that Everton, and not necessarily because of the atmosphere, but because of being at Goodison Park to see the last FA Cup game. And so I take my mate Sharky, who actually produces tail end to that game. And the way you pick Sharky out from a crowd is he looks like he's got a little Charlie Brown cloud over the top of him, raining on just him. He has the essence of Everton everywhere he goes. And if Everton are losing football matches, he'll be dressing in black everywhere he goes. He just has this feeling of like life hasn't worked out for me stitched into it, and that comes from Everton. But when you go to Goodison Park, I realise there's 30,000 Sharkies. They're all Sharkies. There's just one big Charlie Brown crowd over all of them. And there's actually quite an emotional moment of seeing them beat by Bournemouth in the last game at Goodison Park, where it brings up the conversation that they had of like, if you knew it was the last time you were going to be somewhere or see someone, would that make life easier or harder? What would you do with that information? And so it was interesting to see Goodison Park responding and reacting to that feeling of knowing, like a ticking clock, that their attachment with this place was running out. And so I felt that, even like putting my hands on the wooden seat, I felt really sort of moved by it when I left Goodison Park, even though I've only ever been there once before in the away end. So that's the one I felt kind of probably the most touched by and in contact with.
For people to know more, they're going to have to read the book, aren't they? Well, that's good enough for me. Mate, you've given us more than enough of your time. I appreciate it. Just to let people know, the book is Whatever Will Be. And what's the subtitle?
A Matter of Life in Football. So it's a loose sequel to my first book, which was A Matter of Life in Cricket. See what I've done there?
Yeah, I've seen what you've done, but you haven't mentioned your midlife crisis, which is what it's really all about. Anyway, less said about that, the better.
Exactly. Yeah, correct. Correct.
Good luck with the book. Good luck with the reforming of the band and the subsequent tours and so on. Good luck generally. I'm going to meet you at some football ground or otherwise.
I look forward to it. It's meant to be this season, I think, guys.
Of course, it's meant to be. It's taken
Sarah.
Exactly.
On that note, thank you. Do remember tomorrow's Brazilian Shirt Name podcast is Global Soccer Interactive, even, so you can join in the conversation. Felix, many thanks.
Cheers, guys. Keep on cottaging.
Get in touch with the Brazilian Shirt Name podcast on Twitter @BrazilShirtPod, or you can email us BrazilianShirtNamePod@gmail.com. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe, rate and tell a friend. The Brazilian Shirt Name podcast is an 1129 production.